Hello and welcome to the Broadcast Tech Talks podcast, TV industry podcast from the Broadcast Tech team. Airspeeder is the world's first racing series for flying electric cars. The first competitive races were last year, I believe, with the remotely piloted EXA Series, which navigate tracks in the sky in a series of close proximity races. Stephen will be able to tell us a lot more about this very exciting new format. And we've got Ben Foakes here as well from Base Media Cloud, with Stephen Sidlo from Airspeeder. We're going to be talking about their partnership on this project and building an end-to-end digital media workflow. I'll hand over to Stephen first, I think, to give an overview of Airspeeder. Flying electric cars, all sounds very exciting, Stephen.
Yeah, when I hear it back, I always get a little bit of excitement from whoever talks about it, really. But that's right. Yeah, thanks, Jake. I think the kind of easiest way to sort of position this is we are the Formula One in the sky. So it's the best way to kind of come at it, which is 10 speeders or 10 vehicles all competing within sort of 3 kilometers, but airborne. So new forms of transportation. These vehicles go around 150 kilometers an hour currently, but we're going to go up to 300 kph when we have someone on board. These huge systems we've got to put in place, everything from what media looks like, but also what infrastructure looks like. So, yeah, this is flying racing in the sky and flying cars, and it's never been done before. And that's part and parcel of why we're working with Base.
These will be piloted vehicles, but initially, from my understanding, is they're not. So, yeah, what's the first stage, and then what's the kind of the end point you're looking to get to?
Yeah, initially, the EXA Series stands for external aviator, or remotely piloted for the layman. And I think we're doing that just to build and test systems again. So before we put someone on board, we need to test autonomous return to home functions. We need to test the safety systems on board. We also need to test the sporting rules and regulations. What does this sport look like? And the only way we really want to do that is if we don't have someone on board, a pilot on board. So we thought we'd create an F2 to F1 or a remotely piloted version, but that throws up an even bigger challenges. How do we control these vehicles over 5G without any latency? How do we do that safely? And the engineers in the company will tell you it's a lot harder controlling autonomous flying machines than it is piloted. So
right.
we've done it upside down to what everybody wants, but it's much harder this way. But it's the right, going left to right is the best way. Who knows though? I think for the EXA Series we might want to continue as a sport. We kind of tap into our audiences like drone racing fans and e-gamers, etc. But I know deep down the reason why I joined the company is let's do a real Formula One Grand Prix in the sky with people on board. That's the holy grail.
With this series at the moment, I know you've been over to Australia to start testing this in the deserts and big wide open areas there. So Ben, how are you kind of capturing content from these this initial sort of set of tests, and kind of what's the sort of end point in terms of the content that you want to create? Where's it going to be distributed, and how are you grabbing that content in the first place?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I think first of all, this is a super exciting project for me because I'm a massive technology geek and racing fan and big into motorsport. And when I first started speaking to Stephen about it, I was laughing about the relevance back to the Future and like flying cars. So it's a fun project, and the fact it's so innovative and forward thinking really maps and aligns with Base and our strategy. We're always looking at like new things, new ways to do things, new tech. So because we're a multi-cloud media services provider, we'll typically go into an account and work with the customer to figure out what they need, what their workflow challenge is, what they're trying to do, and then we'll build a solution, like tailor it to them. So Stephen and I have known each other for a number of years now across different businesses, and this was a great example of where the brand new sport wanted to get maximum exposure to the fans, had a large amount of video content to produce in a short space of time, and the challenge of some remote crazy locations. So what we've done, phase one of the project, was how do we get all of our videos like centralized, viewable, tagged, searchable, and create a distribution hub. Because I believe from when we signed the contract to when you had your first video release and press launch, it was like literally a week or so that we had to turn it around. So it was very fast paced, which we like. So phase one was ingesting closed files, putting them into an asset management solution, and providing a kind of branded hub to be able to distribute out to the various partners. But that's really simple. We do that all day long. And the thing that we're both excited about is the next gen technology challenges that are coming down the line. And this is stuff that my CTO, Damon, and I have looked at for years. It's around data lakes and centralizing data and pulling data from things like LiDAR, radar, sensor data, video data, blending that together in the cloud and making it usable. And there's a whole new world opening up in this space, especially in motorsport and in racing, and also in autonomous vehicle technology. And it's something we've been looking at for years. So I can't say too much, but I think in terms of roadmap, this is not going to be a regular cloud storage or media library system. It's going to be a much more interesting tech project.
And is this related to the tracks in the sky and the kind of navigation of these vehicles to some degree?
Yes, it is. I think you have to build a foundation, and that's what myself and Ben have been working on, which is how do we do all the, not the easy things, but how do we do the things that are regular within the sports industry? So media asset management solutions, getting all the existing content into the platform. How do we get distribution out from that? That's not the easy part, but it's step one. Step two, step three, and step four is how do we do that with audio? How do we do that with graphics? How do we do that with data that doesn't really has never been quantified before? It's never been ingested before. These are new types of mobility solutions, and there's different types of telemetry that you would find in our craft than you would a plane or a car on the ground. So for Ben and his team and the company at Base, it's how we can then replicate what we've done with video into other things, and how do we knit all of that together? So it's a huge undertaking, and the tracks are just one element of that. So for instance, 3 weeks before we go to a race, I have to send a drone out to LiDAR scan an environment to understand where the speeders are going to be in that space, and then we have to put that into Unreal Engine and then paint a track. Once we get the telemetry, once we understand where these speeders have raced, then we have to knit that with graphics. We have to knit that with the drone content, the onboard video content, and everything has to work semi-seamlessly. I'm not going to say this is what we're going to work overnight, because it's just never been done before. So we have to think 2, 3, 4 chess moves ahead where we want to be. So a lot of my sort of push to Base and Ben and the team is we have to be quick to do all the video and get all that into the system. How do we then do that remote editing, fix that remote editing challenge? Because we have audio coming next, we have graphics coming next, we have telemetry coming next. And this is just a huge iterative, scalable project. And then on top of that, so 5, 6 chess moves ahead, we're talking about the teams independently doing this. So just, there'll be 10 teams, and they'll each have to have that solution. Right. So this is a monster in a sense. And it starts with video, it starts with the what has gone on before. And that's why we're working together, because we just need that foundation. We need to kick on from here, though.
Yeah, you touched on something quite interesting there around the remote working part. One of the big challenges with this series is you've got teams located in Australia and the UK and other locations that all need to collaborate, and you actually couldn't do it with hardware. It's just not, the physics don't work. So we're currently working on a pilot to optimize shared storage and have a global shared file system in the cloud and remote edit stations in the cloud, so that you can be shooting the racing and have people working in different time zones and publishing the content online for distribution. And you you basically can't do that with the old tech. It has to be online and cloud-based. So that's a really quick win that we can do together to help, as well as the more long-term thinking.
And I imagine to try and put this out live with all of the additional graphics and data that you're talking about, and this kind of unreal environment, how do you go from what's happening literally at the moment to what the viewer sees? How long does that take?
Jake, my boss, always says to me, Matt Pearson, he always says, I've created flying car racing, so anything is possible now, so go and get it working. So that type of pressure happens. But I think live won't come around for a 3 or 4 years. I think we want to get the racing right and safety system right, and we're not necessarily looking at that yet, which is a blessing for me and Ben, because we can just build all of this for post and get the system up and running first. But touch wood, there's no live just yet, but the ambition is in the future, live motorsport for sure.
And what timescales are we looking at for the first kind of televised races of the EXA Series?
We want to get a season of EXA races, remote EXA races up and running, so 3 or 4 in parallel, put someone on board and do testing. So 12 to 18 months is kind of a place where we've got all of that system in place. I think we'll be looking to do broadcast at that stage. The conversation's starting now, but we want to be sure. I think we're coming at this differently, where we're building the product first, building the vehicles first, testing them, building the scope of it. In parallel, all these systems are being turned on, and then we'll kind of have that package to go straight to a partner or a broadcast partner or a platform and say, look, we have it all now. Let's just hit the button and go, rather than try and sell it too soon before we've proved it.
Yeah. And one thing as well that we should also talk about, it sounds really interesting, are these robot aviators that I've been reading about, which let me see what I've got here. It says analytical data for the robot aviators that takes the place of the pilots. They digitally receive remote inputs and mimic the movements of the human pilot on the ground. And so tell us a bit about this. Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, we have to have a ballast in there that is that supports the weight of a human pilot. So we figured that a human would be moving around somewhat. It sounds quite cyborgy, Jake, but it's not as it's more marketing speak, I would say, with that one than anything from our esteemed colleagues in the press department. But I think it's more that we wanted to create a weight and a distribution of movement in there that can mimic a human, but it is gathering data and it is being controlled from the ground. So a little bit of a license there, but it is part and parcel of data gathering that we do that.
Yeah. And is that more stuff that you have to handle, Ben?
Not yet, but if you think about the roadmap of pulling all of these data streams, putting them into a central data lake, and then running things like AI against them to get useful insights, that's going to be part of the longer term project. And that's honestly kind of what excites me and the leadership team the most. And partly it's because what Airspeeder are doing is quite revolutionary, but it, like with all new things, it's going to pull up a whole new industry and a whole new tech space. And we know from our other motorsports clients we work with in electric vehicle racing and such like, as well as our gaming industry clients, that there's just an emerging need for more data streams to be consolidated and made useful. There's just so much data flying around, and it's no longer just about video files and Premiere project files. Now you've got all this ancillary stuff that has to be handled, and that's where we see big growth opportunities.
I was at the Goodwood Festival of Speed at the weekend. I was speaking to the guys at the Bloodhound project, which is like the land speed record guys, and they were telling me the challenges that they've got with having a drone that is fast enough to catch their vehicle with someone in it. And so they're looking for haptic suits for the driver or pilot in that ground-based vehicles, which is what we're looking at as well. So the new forms of data is actually the vital signs of those pilots on board. So, when we talk about it, it's the pilot will know if there's a competitor behind them on their left shoulder, because it will tap them on the haptic suit or shake their hand, and that needs to be relayed to a ground station and turned into graphics that and becomes more immersive for an audience member or someone watching this through VR. So Ben's right. There's no shortage of data. It's capturing it and putting it into a system that, or even creating a system that means that we could create content out the back of it. And it's, for me, it's not been done at this scale before, because keep coming back to this, but take away the sport, no one's ever done this type of built this type of transportation before. So we're writing the rules from the ground up.
And when you're doing that and working with a company such as Base, how does it work compared to a traditional broadcast? This is quite a different approach, because you need to get all the workflow and being able to handle all this data as well as the video, and sort of merge it into something that you can then do something with, i.e. what Base are doing. But then you've also got the, in this case, Aurora, who are the production company. How do you all get together and make sure that this is all making sense to everyone?
We have to start with remote relationships, remote structures, remote communication, remote platforms, and I think it's iterative, and it's a challenge to start from remote first, but actually it's going to benefit us all in the long run, because we just built it for remote rather than the other way around. So it's the same relationship with Aurora and with Base, and with Base they've already worked with Aurora previously, and we've got very similar workflows and ways that we do things. So There's a common language, I think, between all parties here. But yeah,
it does make it easier. We've worked with Aurora. Base have worked with Aurora since 2014, and I've worked with them since the company was founded in sort of post-production workflow. So we've got a really good alignment, and they're actually one of our biggest partners in sport. And I think it may even be how we originally met one another, Stephen, was you were interested in what we've been doing with Formula E racing. So it works really well, and their team have got a really great understanding of cloud workflows and how to implement them into a host broadcast. So I mean, that's perfect. We can all specialize and do what we're best at.
Yeah. And the sort of things that you're putting together now, will this change completely once you have the piloted vehicles that will eventually replace or at least complement the EXA series? Or is this stuff that you can sort of transition over into these very, very fast races that you'll have that are manned?
Transition over, I think, is the best way, best analogy to use, the example to use here. I think all of the work that we're doing in EXA can transition over. I think for us, that's the point of EXA. We don't have all the answers. It's a development series. It's here to answer the questions on how we do things, put the systems in place, and then we transport that over to Airspeeder for the premium Grand Prix race series. There's elements that are going to be change. For instance, one of my problems at the moment is the amount of filming drones in the air and those gathering data, and how that gets turned into content. So the drones obviously will get bigger and better over the next sort of 3 to 4 years, and we have to find a system that will be able to fly them with our speeders. So they have to have collision avoidance systems on, for one better example, and that will iterate and change. The different types of cameras and drones that we put up in the sky will change, but ultimately EXA is here to be step one, and we'll just keep growing as other motorsports do. There's things that will change, things that will plug and play in and out, but ultimately we want to build the system through EXA and then hop it over.
Fair enough. And obviously, before we finish, I need to ask, again, timescales for these crude races, the ones that are going to be massively headline grabbing once they're up and running. Yeah, what are we looking at for that, Stephen?
I've had this question asked so many times. It's I've got the same answer really. Where we are today is we're looking at our first hover tests this year, and that's going to be done by those from military, and once those have gone out of the way, you're looking at Felix Bubnagada jumping from space, one of those key moments that happens. Definitely. And once we go from that, we'll do we'll set a Guinness record for fastest eVTOL vehicle as well. And once we've done that, we'll have a good system in place to start racing. But I can't put a date on it, it would be post 12 months. We've got to build a vehicle as well that's safe for them. And there's a lot of testing that's involved there too. So just on a side note, I think we've got the racing itself, but we also have all the testing that happens with those pilots. So that's a lot of simulator testing. It's a lot of 360 orbs that you have VR headsets and haptic suits, and you spin them around and test them inside Unreal Engine in a game environment. That's just data hungry, and we want to capture in that as well. So there's a big jump between where we are with EXA into simulating and testing for safety, and then into race. So that we're going to start approaching that very soon. So 12 to 18 months, we should be in a good spot.
Amazing. Do you have pilots all lining up to volunteer to do this thing?
Yes, we've had a lot of interest. I think, but I normally say the same thing, which I've got a driving license, but that doesn't give me kind of any experience in an F1 car. A lot of people have pilots licenses, but it doesn't transition over to much. You need the racing gene, and so we're looking at pulling pilots from the F fighter pilots and Formula One, Formula E, and just those on the very edge of sanity. Yeah, in this world.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Ben, do you have anything else to add that we haven't covered already?
When can I sign up? I'd quite like to fly one of these things. It's a boyhood dream to do fighter pilot and stunt flying. So maybe one day.
You are. It's one of your first pilots for you there, Stephen.
Well, if you head to airspeeder.com and you can sign up to be a pilot. I can't guarantee
you put in a good word.
I can't guarantee you'll go through, but you can definitely sign up.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and rate us. I'll see you next time for the next episode of the Broadcast Tech Talk series.